Hello and welcome to a short Belfast in conversation video between myself, Dermot Devlin from My Way Access, and the wonderful Fatma Al Jassim from Dubai. Welcome.
Welcome, Dermot. It's a pleasure to meet you, and I'm excited to have this conversation with you.
It's great for you to join us today and um, to tell each other about what it's like to be a disabled woman in Dubai, and we can share stories about what it's like in the two different countries and continents. So maybe if you want to tell us a little bit about yourself, I believe that you're a very powerful figure in the MRI for disabled people. So maybe if you want to just let our listeners and watchers know a little of all this great work that you get up to.
Sure. My name is Fatma Al Jassim. I'm currently working as a disability empowerment consultant on a voluntary basis with governments and companies and individuals across the region and internationally. I'm a disability advocate from the UAE, based in Dubai, uh, and I'm also uh, I've been involved in policy making in the region for people with disabilities, and I'm currently a graduate student studying a master's in education. Also, um, I'm the first Emirati woman. I'm the first Emirati who's been certified in professional accessibility. So, the field of accessibility for disabled people.
But that sounds like you've got definitely a full itinerary there. You know, I myself would be a different disability advocate as well, because I do a bit of voluntary work for our local council, the Fermanagh non-mandatory council disability advisory group. So I would advise the council just on the disability policies that they would unroll, put out to the council area. But I would also highlight any sort of inconsistencies or any problems that it might have with regard to disability rights and inclusions. But I'm also started doing a bit of voluntary work as well for the Stormont government here in Ireland, in Northern Ireland, with regard to helping them to form a new disability strategy, which will be revealed in 2022. So it's all about, trying to get the conversation going and getting disabled people into the heart of government and into where decisions are being made so that we can make these changes. So, but I didn't really start my advocacy work till I was 29, so I was quite late in the game. So just what age did you begin, just out of curiosity?
To be honest, I think I've been an advocate pretty much all my life. Um, like looking back at my life, there always has been challenges that I faced. That
Yes.
whether it's in education, in mainstream education, and the university, whether it's or whether it's just like attitudinal obstacles. I think those areas that I was challenged in on a daily basis that helped me become an advocate by default
Yes.
um, because at first I stood up for myself in terms of advocating for accessibility, advocating for education mostly, but I as soon as I realized that I can pave the way for others that so they can have a better life. I think
Yes.
this is the moment that I realized that I've been born to be an advocate. Um, and this is my passion. And I remember the first sort of workshop lecture I gave about inclusion and advocacy was me being a seventh grader. So I'm talking about a while back.
You,
Uh,
you, you definitely got started in the ball quicker than I did, and I thought, not brilliant to hear. Though I suppose, but like yourself, that I began doing it on a partial basis when I was at school too, making sure that it was a disabled toilet so that I would be able to use the facilities at my school and to ensure that the doors and the level access outside was all in place. So while I mightn't been doing it as a vocation or as a passion, it was probably part of my life the whole way as a child too. So, but we definitely have that in common too. 'Cause, you know, because now I've got to that age where, um, but like yourself, I want to sort of pave the way for people coming behind me. So I want to kick down the door at my end. So I'm going to try and keep it open for people coming behind me.
exactly. I think for us, like people who are for us who are people like those challenges that we go through make us feel like we have to um, voice ourselves in a way that other people, like other disabled people who are younger generations, don't face the same challenges or face a less of a challenge, let's say. Um, and this has been the inspiration and motivation behind my work. To be honest.
Then with all the work that you're doing out there, like in Dubai and that region as well, what is the public perception of disabled people? Would it be quite progressive? Uh, how are disabled people treated? Do they listen to your recommendations and things that you're saying?
I think like there has been a great shift in the UAE about in terms of how we view disability. Um, I think the challenges are pretty much the same all over the world. Um, and uh, the way we view disability in the UAE has turned in a positive, empowering, um, uh, highlighted way because ever since the UAE has ratified the UNCRPD, there is a tremendous work that's been put into policy,
Sure.
into uh, into initiatives that possibly help disabled people and help non-disabled people to realize the potential. Um, I'd say the way here in the UAE that works and what stemmed the positive outlook of disability or the more like normalizing outlook is that the UAE has influenced in a top to bottom approach. So meaning um, whatever the government embraces in terms of policies, uh, in terms of initiatives, gets translated um, into the society and transfer it impacts the culture. Uh, like looking back, I think one of the turning points that happened in the UAE is the hosting of the Special Olympics in Abu Dhabi in 2019. especially when it comes to stigma against people with intellectual disabilities. It's really helped elevate those kind of stigmas, and it rose a lot of awareness since the entire nation was involved in volunteering and to hosting the World Games.
No, well, it's good to hear that some of that work's going on over there now. But I know, like here, like it was in the UK, the Disability Discrimination Act came in 1995. So we're actually celebrating 25th year anniversary last month, which was fantastic. Like because I remember even before that, like my sister, she lives in London, or she lived in London at that stage, and I remember when I was younger, I went over to visit her, and I got onto one of the London buses, but the bus conductor tried to kick me off the bus because, quote unquote, that I was a fire hazard. But
Mm.
thankfully, the Londoners and the bus were all here about how great Londoners are, and they stayed up for me that time, and they told the conductor, like, if he was going to put me off, that they were all going to get off the bus as well, which was great. But that just shows you the importance of the DDA Act that came out in 1995 has made for the lives of disabled people within the UK, because things that that conductor had done now is actually illegal now, where before that it wasn't illegal. So if a sudden like that happened again, disabled people could take that company or that person to court and would win because it's against the act. And then we also had the Equality Act that came in 2010. But like a lot of legislation, like there's a lot more that can be done, and some of the work that you have done with the UNCBRD, will tighten all that up as well. But some of the work that you're doing within your government, and what I'm hoping to do now with the government here in Stormont, is to try and tighten up some of these laws, and which I think is crucial to this is that they're actually talking to disabled people now and finding out what they need and what we want and what needs to be done.
Yeah.
And in a lot of cases, like we're not asking for a crazy and outlandish thing, we're just asking that, consider this and here's a way around it. And when people think about disability access or disability rights, does it's inexpensive or awkward thing to do. It's really not. So, which is why I think it's important. And you'll definitely agree with me too, is bring disabled people into the conversation. And that helps inform, but it also makes us feel have ownership as well of what's happening, and we know what's happening because in a lot of cases, as you're familiar with yourself, non-disabled people decide what we need, and then they implement it, and then we come in it when everything's all set, and it's not right.
Yeah. And to be honest, I think in order to embrace diversity and be inclusive, a lot like um um a wide range of people, a wide range of representation has to be done, regardless of disability or not, um, per se, but in general, unless you live the daily life of a disabled person, you wouldn't be able to imagine what are the solutions. So like I've been working with governments for a long time now, and what I really would say is that the importance of having a person with a disability on board is massive, because it helps the government realizes where are the gaps, where are what's needed to be done, but it also helps helps them to in a way to realize the potential of disabled people, because if often people think that disabled people are a burden,
Yeah.
um, which is not true.
But I think what did you say? People have to um, incorrect perception of what they think of when they think of a disabled person. That, as you say, that we're not, maybe we mightn't have the skills to do what people think we should be doing, or maybe that all we think about is disability rights and disability advocacy and stuff like that. But if you chat about disabled, we are so much more than that. We are like full people, a full person with a full and active life. And like, and I've been reading up a bit about you over the last few weeks, and I learned one of the things that you've done recently, if you want to share, which I watched it here today, which I've got to admit I was incredibly jealous. It's something I want to do. So, like, and this is something that maybe somebody mightn't think that a disabled person can do, but you've done it. So, if you want to let people know what you've done.
Sure. So a while back, I I I I became the first Emirati female with a disability to ever skydive. I think um the inspiration behind that is just that I'm an adventurous person, and I I wanted to. So I've been paragliding before. So when I paraglided, I realized that what's next? Next is skydiving. So when I reached out first to the Dubai skydiving team here in Dubai Skydive, or Skydive Dubai. The first kind of reaction I got is that how can we do it? It was surprising for them, and to be honest, not only for them, also for my doctor who at first refused to give me a permission or a report that says I can skydive. I'm cleared to skydive. But after having a conversation of how to do it and working with them to figure out a way that works for me personally, uh, everyone got intrigued by the idea, and I did it. I think it was 2016. I think so. Yeah, it was 2016, a while back. Uh, and this shows you how it's important to discuss things. It doesn't mean like having a disability doesn't mean that you have like yes, you have limitations, but you can work around your limitations, for example. And
That's one of the things I always say, that disabled people are the best people in the world who are able to adapt, and we'll always find a way around something.
yeah, true, very true. So
Oh,
my experience was very I know it's a cliche to say it, but it was life changing, and I would do
uh,
it again.
well, one of the things that I enjoy doing on a yearly basis is cosplaying. I don't know if you're familiar with that is.
I'm not really sure.
It's basically if you're familiar with Comic Con,
Oh,
it's like a like
cosplaying, yeah, for
yeah. So
sure.
basically, what I like to, because even when I'm 41, I'm still a kid at heart. I like to dress up with cartoon characters, film characters, and TV characters and stuff like that. So over the years, I've dressed up as Ghostbusters from the films, and I've dressed up as Thanos
Amazing.
from Avenger films. A couple of years ago, I even dressed up as do you ever watch Game of Thrones? Have you seen that at
Uh,
all?
I'm one of the few people who didn't watch it, but
Well,
um, I'm
I
I'm familiar with it because all of my family watched it before, so I'm familiar with the characters.
I cosplay as uh, Tyrion Lannister. If you're familiar with
Oh,
him. So I
interesting.
got the whole job done, and I got the Iron Throne built around my wheelchair and everything. It was so crazy because Some people actually thought I was Peter Dinklage, the guy who plays him. It was that good. But again,
You
it
have to
just,
show me the pictures
I
later.
definitely will say it. But it just shows you that disabled people cannot and should not be put into one box. Just because most of us have to fight for our rights and fight for inclusion and fight for accessibility and all this stuff, we still have a full and active life. Because I'm dressing up all the time, running around the country, acting like a fool, and you're throwing yourself out of an airplane. So nobody would expect that from us or from disabled people.
Exactly.
But
Exactly.
again, like a lot of people, not just disabled people, that I haven't been able to do that this year, and like yourself, you probably haven't been able to do much this year because of the global pandemic, COVID.
Mm,
So I'm just
yeah.
wondering, like in Dubai and yourself in person, like how has that affected you? With not just with being able to get out and about and see people and do your work. Like you're still able to do that, but has it also impacted on your mental health? Whether it be good or bad.
So, like when the first, like when the pandemic hit, personally, I was actually interning back then in Abu Dhabi, which is the capital of the UAE. Uh, and I shifted remotely. For me, the pandemic, even though it was very negative in terms of it affected like not being able to access healthcare as you would as a disabled person. Uh, for example, not being able to go out, but it also affected me positively in terms of um, it helped me recenter and consider um, reconsider everything and just quiet down, because I feel like people, regardless of they're disabled or not, they're taken away with life in terms
Yeah.
of being like life is so hectic, so it kind of helped me to calm down as a person and reevaluate what I want to do in life. But there's another like there's another aspect to it, which is like because I have my siblings are part of the front line battling COVID. So that a part of me was calm and a part of me was anxious at the same time, thinking of what will happen if they God forbid they get and they get COVID and that's the first couple of weeks were roller coaster, but I think it's been good in a sense of uh, reevaluation, personal reflection for me. Um, I wanted to ask you a question. What let me know about like the what do you think about the UK's response to COVID when it comes to disabled people, and I'll share later on what I think about the UAE.
From businesses, yes.
Mhm.
From businesses.
As a response, like in terms of the healthcare
Or the
response.
healthcare, no problem. Well, I actually put myself into lockdown several weeks before the rest of the country did. So I actually went in. Actually, today is actually my 280th day in lockdown. So while the rest of the country is probably in the third one now, I'm still stuck in my first one. So my anxiety levels have gone up through the roof, but it's actually gone back down again now. So I'm quite happy where I am now. Whether that's Stockholm syndrome or whether I'm just getting used to it now that this is the new norm, whatever. But I'm quite happy. But it's given me, like you say, it kind of gave me a chance to evaluate what was going on in my life and what my priorities are, which let me open up new avenues and focus in new areas, such as like did a couple of online courses and actually able to do a bit more advocacy work through Zoom and stuff like in Microsoft Teams. But as for the response, it has been quite hit and miss.
Mm,
There were a lot of cases where they've been setting up, for example, priority shopping, so that where disabled people could, when they're ordering food online, that are ordering from the local shop, that they would be given priority because essentially we were quite restricted in the movement that we could make that maybe non-disabled people could make. So even with some lockdown, disabled people could still go to shops and get their groceries or get their weekly shop or whatever they might do, whether it go to the hospital and stuff like that. So
that's
priority shopping was opened up for
mm,
whoever it wasn't regimented and people that were not disabled, they didn't want to go shopping,
mm,
got in ahead with disabled people. And while I was lucky because I've got family around me and good neighbours that were in like a local shop who was able to buy stuff. So I never went without, but I do know plenty of other disabled people who went hungry for maybe a week because they couldn't get into the priority listing because it was taken by other disabled, by taken by
mm.
non-disabled people. And as for
Okay.
maybe the vaccine that had come out in the UK now, like I would be what would we call the high risk category for getting the vaccine, but I'm sixth on the list of priority getting it, which
Mm,
now there's members of society above me, like in the over 80s, Northern Home like that, and I fully accept and I fully understand, and rightly so that they should be ahead of me, but I don't feel like myself and other people in my position should be sixth on the list when there's people ahead of me that just because they're in a certain age category or a certain category should be ahead of me when maybe their health is perfect and they're not
yeah.
in a high risk. They just put in that area because homogeneously that's not where they belong. So I think that with respect it should be done on a health basis rather than, well, you're this age category or you belong in this group. So that's where you should be. And it should be done on a health basis, done by your medical records. So while the response has been good in some respect, I can't fault the medical staff, can't fault the hospitals. They've all been perfect. It's just the system behind it I find to be quite lacking. What about yourself?
Like looking back at like what happened during lockdown is that the first thing within the first, like, I believe 2 weeks of lockdown in the UAE. Let me talk about in my personal experience. I'm still in lockdown, like you, and I've been in lockdown since March. So it's been a while. But there are some positive points that in the UAE. Like, for example, within the first 2 weeks, the government has announced a program where disabled people across the country, whether or not they were UAE nationals or not, to get like PCR tests done at their house, and for free. For example, rather than going outside. And what I really liked about the government's response in terms of COVID, that like police police stations, or like the police authorities were 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 very understanding in terms of, in lockdown, they issued like permits for people with, let's say, an autistic person or a person who had an intellectual disability. They need to they need to move around and breathe fresh air, they would be allowed a certain like I believe an hour or two, and like while other people are in lockdown. So those considerations are very amazing. As far as I know, in terms of the vaccine, at this point, um, disabled people are not uh, are not considered in the um while vaccinating in terms of like the trials uh, because of the health issues. But I'm sure while once the vaccine is reaches the UAE and like in terms of the vaccine trial, like the health trials, I'm sure if once they finish prioritizing the frontline workers or people who are work in the front line, the next would be elderly and people with disabilities for sure.
Yeah.
But the number one priority for now, I know the people who are working in terms of like in uh, in jobs or occupations who like are medical staff or are teachers, for example, they're
Yeah.
highly encouraged to get vaccinated,
All right.
and
I would
the,
agree with that.
the second priority would be elderly and people with disabilities for sure.
We spoke a little earlier just about regarding about what the government and local government perception of disabled people are, and how things are changing, particularly with the UN legislation and the Disability Discrimination Act here as well. But I just wondering, societally, like how do people in UAE, like how do they perceive disabled people? Are you equal members of society and looked at equally, or would there be sort of maybe a little bit of sort of just looking down upon you?
Um, for that, I'd say like a lot of so a lot like when I was like as a child, uh, of course I had instances where like I was like discriminated against, but there has been so much emphasis on awareness and on how to interact with people with disabilities, how to be how to remove prejudice. Like for example, I'll talk about my type of work. So I started a while back in 2014. I started doing workshops on teaching people how to um, interact with different disabilities under the name of the art of dealing with people with disabilities. And the reason I started those is that I felt like people were being anxious and did not know how to interact with people with disabilities, and this is common for everywhere. I think a lot of people tiptoe around people
Yeah,
with disabilities
I think
because
that's
they
the case, but I definitely agree there because it's they're not doing it intentionally. It's not like it's just that they don't have many disabled representation, or they don't come into contact with many disabled people maybe in their regular lives. So
Exactly.
when they do actually come face to face with somebody disabled, that they quite naturally, and I don't blame them in the slightest for this. It can be quite upsetting sometimes, but they do tense up and they kind of get a bit awkward. But I do think this could be like a positive step forward. Could be maybe when you have television and you've got films and comic books and things like that, that there should be more disabled representation in it. Now people
Yeah.
might say, well, but there is already. But I would say, now, maybe you might disagree with me, that it can be done kind of in tropes, in the sense that the disabled person's there to represent a storyline that they want to do, whether it's like they want to represent the inspirational disabled person or the poor little disabled person just has such a hard life, yet they're not actually showing the real life of the disabled person who likes to skydive, who likes to dress up at the weekend. They're not seeing any of that on the silver screen. Like, how do you feel about that sort of, like, do you think there needs to be more done
Mm.
in the entertainment and media to represent us?
Of course. The reason, so my bachelor's in communication is in strategic communication, and the reason I entered the media sphere in terms of studying and in terms of choosing the major is that I felt like there's so much to be done, and there's so much to be done in the media sphere because after all, we are all bombarded by media 24/7. So whether we know it or not, we suck in uh, uh, the stuff we see or hear or view. So I think what we need is we need more um, well-rounded representation and not uh, what we lack. What we have at the moment is that representation for just checking for the sake of checking the box, and that's it.
Yeah,
um, what we need is that we don't need to see the both extremes of like being a disabled person being depressed, or a person with a disability who's being thought as inspirational or a superhero, for example. And that starts with being kids, for example, with your kids, with reading them a story about a person with a disability. It's just that we often think that media is uh, does not reflect our our lives, but it impacts our lives. It influences our way of thinking, and that's a big. Like the entertainment industry has a lot to do in terms of including people with disabilities. There's an issue of uh, disabled people not being represented by disabled people.
yeah.
Movies, for example, they're being represented by able-bodied. This is an example of I wouldn't say misrepresentation, but it won't be as authentic.
No, but I definitely, because I think until you sort of over them shoes or taking the steps of the disabled person, you can't fully understand or fully portray what it is to be disabled.
Exactly. Yeah, I share that view too. Exactly.
And again, that's just to show that there's so many different types of disabilities out there. When people say like somebody disabled, automatically they might just think of somebody in a wheelchair.
Mhm.
Whereas globally, wheelchair users only make up between 5 and 7% of disabled people worldwide. So while I'm a wheelchair user myself, I'm not the majority of disabled people that way. But But there are many like different types of, like my disability can be seen because I use a wheelchair and I'm 3 foot tall. Now I don't know, like there's plenty of other disabilities out there which are invisible, whether it could be a learning disability, or it could be autism or something you can get there, or it could be mental health. Somebody could be suffering from depression, or so there's so many different types of ways, and all these different types of disability need to be heard and need to be understood. Because when you talk about disability, there's not one model fits everybody. Like we are all individuals, just like everybody who is non-disabled are all individuals as well. So just because I'm disabled, just because you're disabled, we don't fit in the one block and the one pocket.
Yeah,
Even though we
exactly.
do, even though we share many things, like the fact that I want to jump out of an airplane.
Come to Dubai. I'll take you to the
Well,
skydiving.
that's an offer I can't refuse. But I'm talking about me going to Dubai. I've never been there before, but I've heard a rumor you've been to Belfast.
Yeah, it was just one day, but I really enjoyed it, and I can't wait to be back. I loved it, loved the people, loved the environment, the music, the atmosphere was amazing, and the weather too.
Well, definitely, if you come back to Belfast, like we're definitely going to have to meet up as well. And just like you're going to take me skydiving, I'm going to take you cosplaying. But just before we go, maybe we'll just wrap up because we're getting near the end now. Maybe we talked a lot about disability. Just maybe find out a little bit about ourselves, just so people know that give the fuller picture of ourselves. Like I'm Dermot Devlin. I'm 41. I listen to a lot of different kinds of music. Like over the years, I've went to see bands such as AC/DC, all the way
Mhm.
up to Aha. So from the cheesy 80s pop music all the way up to the 70s rocky music. So,
Amazing.
what sort of music are you into yourself?
I couldn't hear you. Can you repeat the question?
What type of music do you like to listen to? Who are your favorite
Yeah.
bands or musicians?
Um, I like to listen to classical music.
Classical music, yeah.
Um, and also Arabic music. I'm not so keen into the pop culture, the mainstream music, I'd say. Um, but I like the quiet classic music that makes you think and reflect. To be honest.
I like a bit of classical too, but like my family laugh at me because see after music in the 80s, I've stopped listening to the charts after the 80s because I don't think they make music the same way as they used to. It's just not as good. But just before I go, like, what kind of hobby did you get up to when you're not advocating for disability rights and flying about in airplanes?
So I'm pretty much very keen to writing, on reading books. So I like novels because they give me the chance to move away from like reality and
Right.
forget about my worries. I like novels which talk about like social aspects, um, and also nonfiction books like history books, for example, and biographies. One of my favorite books that I like to share, which has been translated into English, is so it's originally in Arabic. It's Mama Hassa's Mice. A story that talks about three boys and their friendship, and I don't want to ruin this story.
Well, I must have look out for that book. Sure. Well, I know myself, like, what I like to do is what I do to escape with you when you go into books and that, to escape from the world, I like to do a bit of photography. So it's not like we're actually getting outside with the camera and snapping things. Now, one of my pet hates is, or peeves, is I don't like stage photographs. I like to catch things unaware, whether it's people, whether it's animals, whether it's the countryside. That's the type of things I do because I think that gets the reality of what's going on around me. People in their natural state. Because when I see people like that, I just think it's very cold and very, it doesn't feel real. But then
Yeah.
when I sort of want to let the hair down and relax a bit more, I like to go to the pub with my friends. So surprise, a night man wanting to go to the pub. But that's what I think is I like to do. So I think that's really we've covered everything now. But I'm not really, unless there's anything you'd like to draw at the very end.
Well, the last thing that I want to say is I would like to thank you, Dermot, to invite for the invitation and for the wonderful conversation. To be honest, I was looking forward to it because I always enjoy to look at like different views and different in different parts of the world. So I'd say the last point is that my last point is that inclusion is including everybody. Is open. It's accepting everybody, regardless uh, if they're disabled or not, regardless if they are if they if they have a disability or not. It's just opening um, it's just giving the person a chance to be themselves and uh, gain their perspective and understand it.
Okay, well, first of all, I just want to thank you very much for joining me in the conversation today. I really, really enjoyed it. And it's always great to hear from somebody different and a different view, especially somebody that would be far away from me in Dubai, just as equally as I would be from me too. So it's been really wonderful afternoon chatting to you. And the times have absolutely flew by because it's been a really interesting conversation. Both the fun and the interest and the important stuff as well. And speaking of the important stuff as well, what I would like for our followers to take away from this conversation is number one, is that realize that disabled people don't fit into one box. We are a full person, full with different interests and different applications and whatever we want to do, just like non-disabled people are. We just aren't a disabled person. We are a real person. And secondly, the takeaway as well that when you are going to be talking about disabled people and making changes to make the country or the town or your village or whatever your business more accessible, more inclusive for disabled people, is to include it in the conversation and talk to it. Don't make the decision without it because at the end of the day, unless you talk to it, it's not going to be right. So as the old disability mantra goes, nothing about us without us.
Exactly. And I couldn't say any of the takeaways better. You've done a great job, and you've been a fantastic moderator. Thank you, Madam. Thank you for having me, and I'll look forward to continue the conversation offline, inshallah.
We
Hopefully.
definitely will guide it on. Thank you now. Bye bye.